How does literature define our existence, and why does it endure? For centuries, scholars have pondered these ideas, and they've been mystified by the power of literature. How can we begin to capture the essence of literature as a whole? Each of the pictures in this book represents a unique way in which literature affects our lives. The first picture depicts a child receiving a treasured gift from his parents. The second shows the child's quest to learn to express the emotions created from this experience. And the final picture reveals his attempt to use this knowledge and contribute the insight he's gained through written words. We asked 7 AP Literature students to connect the messages in these photos to their own experiences with literature.
Pride and Prejudice is a love story about Mr. Darcy, a wealthy landowner, and Elizabeth Bennet, the daughter of a country gentleman. Mr. Darcy and Lizzie's story perfectly captures the emotions associated with love, and the line, "In vain have I struggled, it will not do, my feelings will not be repressed, you must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you," is a perfect representation of the ability of literature to preserve and incite emotions. Words, events, and context can be arranged by writers like Jane Austen, just as notes can be arranged by musicians, and colors can be arranged by painters. However, literature is unique in that the stories can evoke specific images, memories, and feelings that other art forms cannot. As readers read Pride and Prejudice, they share Elizabeth's experiences and emotions and begin to understand her. In this way, literature plays an integral part in the development of human morality, empathy, and mutual understanding. This power of literature to shape human existence is also evident in the poem Strange Fruit, which paints powerful images of the effects of slavery. According to scholar Peter Calloway, the words paint a picture that many would prefer to look away from, but that all need to see and feel.
Each girl is given a book by their mother to guide them on their journey, and each takes solace in her own heart. Meg loves to dance, Jo to write, Amy to draw, and Beth to play music, and each finds the beauty and the ability to express herself through art in a way that cannot be done any other way. They find guidance and solitude in doing art solely for the sake of art. Art can preserve, incite, and share human emotions that are integral to the development of morality, empathy, and mutual understanding.
Literature is powerful because it has the ability to be more evocative and impactful in fewer words than any other form of communication. An author can convey the full range of human emotion across generations to create empathy in the reader. The Scarlet Letter is set in the 1600s, yet Hawthorne conveys emotions and moral issues that endure through the centuries. The reader connects to Hester's journey as her passion leads to sin, and as she seeks atonement and demonstrates the power of compassion and sorrow. In Roger Chillingworth's side of the story, on the other hand, the worst aspects of human nature are expressed through his consuming need for vengeance. According to Hawthorne scholar Brenda Wineapple, the Scarlet Letter is about the various masks one wears to hide from oneself the murkier truths and failures of the human heart. Thus, the story reveals secrets and emotions that can't be sufficiently told without literature. Her Kind by Anne Sexton is a poem written over a century later, yet it evokes the same empathy. In 3 stanzas, Sexton makes the reader understand what it's like to be an outcast like Hester Prynne. Emotions not explicitly stated are clear in her words. She writes, "I have been her kind," and the reader experiences it as well.
The most unique thing about literature is its intrinsic ability to articulate a wide spectrum of emotions, a wider one than we can even express by talking. Literature isn't even about the story. Foer calls poems the most pure form of literature for its ability to be emotionally provocative, which we can see in William Blake's A Poison Tree. Blake writes about this spiritual tree of his that becomes watered in fears and rage, but we can't ever put a word to the emotion he feels, because by the end of the poem, Blake is glad that his tree of sickness produced a fruit to poison his enemies. Only literature can concoct this sort of indescribable amalgam of emotions without any story or explanation. Likewise, in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, we become enraptured by the tale of Captain Nemo's marine episodes, not because of some enjoyable plotline, but because of the mystery and enchantment surrounding his rage. In Nemo's final moments, he stretched out his arms to a photo of his wife and child, and then knelt down sobbing. We don't need to know the story of Nemo's tragic past. We merely recognize the rawness of his pain, and we empathize with his vengeful nostalgia.
In The Alchemist Santiago, the protagonist realizes that all literature is connected through one idea that is represented throughout. And this idea is that all things are the manifestation of what's called the soul of the world, and all things are connected through a universal language. We need literature to understand the universal language through which all things communicate, as this allows us to understand the world and more specifically our place in it. In The Alchemist, Santiago is on a quest to fulfill his personal legend, which is one's destiny in life. According to Coelho, we all know what our personal legend is when we're young, but other things such as fear get in the way. On his journey, Santiago meets an Englishman who spends all of his time reading. The Englishman wants to find the Emerald Tablet, which contains the most important literature of alchemy in just a couple of lines. Santiago asks the Englishman, what's the point of all his books if everything can be summarized in just a couple of lines? The Englishman explains that we read all these books just so that we can understand those few lines on the tablet, and these few lines open the window to what's called the soul of the world. In The Oversoul by Ralph Waldo Emerson, Emerson expands on this idea of a universal force. He asks, what is the universal sense of want and ignorance but the fine innuendo by which the soul makes its enormous claim? And then answers it by writing that unity within every man's particular being is contained that common heart of which sincere conversation is the worship, to which all right action is submission, that overpowering reality which constrains everyone to pass for what he is. In his criticism of The Alchemist, Moral de Huron writes that one of the principles of making one's dream satiable is comprehending the interconnecting nature of the things in this world, and sometimes only literature can help us do that.
And to rise again at decent hour, Paul the protagonist finds himself dealing with religion in his own relationships. His life gets complicated when he finds a website and Facebook all under his name, created by the imposter claiming to be a member of the Om. The whole situation evokes Paul to find out his own identity and what his beliefs are. Without literature, people won't be able to understand themselves, nonetheless others. In a similar fashion, in the poem Alone by Maya Angelou, she said that nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. Like Foer said, poem is the purest form of literature. With just a few stanzas, Maya Angelou was able to convey the idea that nobody can get by all by themselves. People need the connection of others to find out their own identity, and just like the confrontation between Paul and the Oms. Thus, literature evokes people to seek for their own identity and gradually understand the emotions of others and work to evolve their own understanding of life, which allow themselves to connect with others.
Abileen's desire to have a lasting impact in her town and to challenge the old-fashioned, racist ideologies of the South parallels with Zora Neale Hurston's Spunk and Robert Frost's Mending Wall. In Spunk, a man, Joe, takes on his town's brutish bully, Spunk, after he begins to court his wife. Joe follows Spunk to the forest to confront him once and for all. Spunk, however, overmatched Joe physically and knew of Joe's intentions to harm him. Predictably, Joe doesn't live through the confrontation. He's shot dead. It's his decision to take action, to stand up for himself, that resonates with the reader and with the town. One town member says, "Know what I think? Joe is a braver man than Spunk. He done took a razor and went out and fight a man he knowed toted a gun. Joe was scared of Spunk, but he went just the same." Meanwhile, in Frost's Mending Wall, an unnamed character challenges his neighbor's belief in the old adage that good fences make good neighbors. He states that his neighbors and his beliefs move in the darkness, which parallels to literature's role in teaching us to question, learn, and expand upon what we believe to know.
William Butcher once gave a literary critique of 20,000 Leagues in which he chided others for having paid too much attention to the signs of Nemo's adventures, which distracted attention from serious literary study. But literature is also about what, as Foer says, charms humans, so I have to disagree with Butcher on his point. Literature sparks our tendency to question our conception of justice, science, and ethics, what have you. If a specific piece of literature resonates with us, we're drawn toward it, and it prompts us to try and discover more.
In Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, 4 sisters named Meg, Jo, Amy, and Beth each embark on a journey to find her better self and become her own little woman. Their father challenges them to embark on their journey in a letter. They, the girls, will be loving children to you, their mother, will do their duty faithfully, fight their bosom enemies bravely, and conquer themselves so beautifully that when I, their father, come back to them, I may be fonder and prouder than ever of my little women. The power of the written word is the ability to rearrange it as you wish before sharing it with others, which is why this means of communication is preferred in this book. When you speak, you can never take back the words. You can't pull them back, change them, and retell them. When they are written, they can be looked at, changed, and shared. All of the girls say things they come to regret as they learn that words have to be spoken with immense care because they can never be taken back.
One maid, Aileen, can only tell her stories if she's given the opportunity to write them down and speak from the page. The ability to rearrange and edit her words ensures that the stories will have the accuracy, resonance, and detail that's needed if they're to have an impact on society. Skeeter, the publisher of the stories, states that her words are more rhythmic and pronounce more clearly than her usual talk.
So why do you think that a child was depicted in the pictures rather than someone or something else?
The parent and the child represent the cycle through which we experience emotion and learn and share it. Literature endures because this learning and sharing of emotions is a necessity.
So how are each of your main points shown through this picture?
Well, for the first main point, we talked about inciting emotions and experiencing those emotions. So in this picture, when the parents are gifting this bear to the child, it's as if they're inciting their emotions of love and care to him, and he's experiencing these for not necessarily the first time, but for a special and memorable time, and eventually he'll want to share what he's experiencing with others. So the second main point relates to reading to learn, and when he's reading to learn to write, it's more about the fact that he's reading to gain knowledge about the world and his place in it. In the third picture, the kid's sharing these emotions that he got from the bear by writing because he can't fully express them with words, which relates to our third main point that literature is the only medium that can support seemingly unexpressible ideas.
How do you think these pictures connect to literature?
They're works of art, and these emotions can be shared through any work of art, not just literature. Fowler says that literature should be interpreted like a work of art and should be complex, so these pictures should be connecting to literature and should be of the same